Hello children, this is for Form 4 Human Biology, Unit 2, Chapter 6, Internal Transport. In this chapter, you will find out the structure and function of human circulatory system, and also you will find out some medical problems affecting the heart and circulation. So, objectives. After discussing this chapter, you should be able to fulfill these objectives. So, first, you should know the general plan of the circulatory system and know the structure of the heart and how it functions. Compare the arteries, veins and capillaries and also understand their roles. Understand the pulse rate as a measure of heart rate and know the role of tissue fluid and know the composition of blood, mainly red blood cells, white blood cells, platelets and plasma, and understand the role of ABO blood groups and their importance, and understand the causes, prevention and treatment of heart diseases. Now let's see what is human circulatory system. So as you can see in this picture, the circulatory system carries blood and dissolved substances to different places in the body. So the heart has the job of pumping these things around the body, and heart and the blood vessels together make up the circulatory system. So the main function of circulatory system is carrying blood and they are dissolved into different parts of the body. Now let's see what are the things that blood carries. So first one is oxygen. The oxygen from the lungs to all parts of the body, and carbon dioxide from all parts of the body to lungs, and nutrients from the gut to all parts of the body, and excretory waste products from liver to kidneys. And apart from that, there are some other things also that blood transport. They are hormones and antibodies like substances. So here the humans and other vertebrates have closed circulatory system. So what do you mean by closed circulatory system? That blood is transported within a system of vessels. Then our human circulatory system consists of three main components. What are they? Heart, blood vessels and blood. So heart is the muscular pump and blood is carried out by blood vessels. So there are three types of blood vessels: arteries, veins and capillaries. And then blood. Blood is the transporting fluid. Then humans and other mammals have double circulatory system. So this double circulatory system has two parts: pulmonary circulation and systemic circulation. Now let's see what is this double circulation system. Every one circulation of the body, the blood passes through the heart twice. That's the meaning. Every one circulation of the body, the blood passes through the heart twice. So in our circulatory system, it has two separate circuits. What are they? Pulmonary circuit and systemic circuit. So the pulmonary circuit is between heart and the lungs, and systemic circuit is between heart and the other organs. So now let's see what is this pulmonary circulation and systemic circulation. So in pulmonary circulation, it carries deoxygenated blood away from the heart to the lungs through pulmonary arteries, and also oxygenated blood returns to the heart through pulmonary veins. So always this word pulmonary deals with when it related to lungs. So then let's see what is the systemic circulation. In systemic circulation, it carries oxygenated blood away from the lungs to the heart through aorta and circulated through all the body parts, and deoxygenated blood returns to the heart through vena cava. Here you can see the main blood vessels in human circulatory system. So when heart is pumped the blood vessels are the one who carries that blood throughout the body. So arteries are usually carry oxygenated blood, and veins are usually carry deoxygenated blood. So but sometimes this will become other way. One example is only one example is there, the pulmonary arteries. Pulmonary arteries and veins are an exception. So pulmonary veins carry oxygenated blood towards the heart, and pulmonary arteries carry deoxygenated blood away from the heart. And also there is another thing that you should remember, that blood is always red, but veins can appear blue because as we see them through our skin, because therefore some people believe that deoxygenated blood is blue. However, this is not that case. Blood only appears blue because of that tissues absorb light and our eyes see that color. So although oxygen does have an effect on the brightness of the blood, blood is never actually blue. So more oxygen can make a brighter red than less makes it darker. So that's the thing. So apart from that, now when we come to here, here you can see the main artery of our heart is aorta. So it will distribute the oxygenated blood all over the body. So then some of the arteries you can hear from your right side: hepatic artery, renal artery, you can see there. Apart from that, what are the other things you can see there? You can see the pulmonary artery and hepatic vein, renal vein also present in there. So now let's discuss about the structure of human heart. So from the first picture you can see the vertical section of heart, and second one is the external view. So here you can see there are 4 chambers in heart. What are they? Right atrium, right ventricle, left atrium and left ventricle. Apart from that, the main blood vessels, aorta, which carries blood to the body, and pulmonary artery, which carries blood to the lungs. Then the superior vena cava, which carries blood to heart, and also there is an inferior vena cava. It carries blood to the heart. So now let's see the structure of heart. So your heart is a hollow muscular cavity. So what is the shape of your heart? It is cone-shaped structure. So where your heart is located? It is located in the thoracic cavity. So we should know the anatomical structures in the heart before going further. So heart is divided into left and right side by septa. So the main function of septa is separating two sides of the heart. So it can prevent the mixing of oxygenated and deoxygenated blood. And our human heart has 4 chambers, 2 upper atria and 2 lower ventricles. Atria are called as receiving chambers and ventricles are known as discharging chambers. So when you are going to labeling heart, you should label that as it was in the chest. So what you are left on the diagram is actually the right hand side. So now let's see the parts in detail. So as I told you, there are 4 chambers. They are responsible for pumping blood and maintaining blood circulation throughout the body. So what are the 4 chambers? If we say the names, the right atrium, left atrium, right ventricle and left ventricle. So the atria open into ventricles via valves. Those are called atrioventricular valves. So there are 4 types of valves present in our heart. Those are named as tricuspid valve, pulmonary valve, mitral valve and aortic valve. So the basic function of all valves is what? To prevent blood flowing backwards. So actually now if we see the function of our heart, the right side, always the right side pumps deoxygenated blood into pulmonary circulation, and right side atrium receive deoxygenated blood from body tissues via superior and inferior vena cava. So then the blood enters right atrium, so it pumps blood into the right ventricle through which? Through tricuspid valve, and the right ventricle pumps the blood into pulmonary artery via pulmonary valve. So the pulmonary artery will deliver the deoxygenated blood to lungs where the gas exchange occurs. So actually what happens there? The blood gather oxygen and get rid of carbon dioxide. So when the oxygenated blood enters to the pulmonary veins and into the left atrium, the left atrium pumps blood into left ventricle. Then the mitral valve prevents blood from flowing backward into the left atrium. So finally the left ventricle pumps the blood into aorta and it allows the systemic circulation. So the oxygenated blood is delivered everywhere in the body. Here you can see the pathway of blood through the heart, or else how the blood circulates in your heart. So here what happened, you can see how deoxygenated blood enters to the heart from right atrium and then to the right ventricle, and how that deoxygenated blood leaves from right ventricle to lungs via pulmonary artery, and then again how that that oxygenated blood from lungs will enter to the heart from pulmonary vein and to the left atrium and then to the left ventricle, and finally how that oxygenated blood will enter to the aorta. Those things you can identify from this diagram. So this is that pathway what I have mentioned earlier. So now you can read this one and get an idea and clarify the things. Hello children, this is for Form 4 Human Biology, Unit 2, Chapter 6, Internal Transport. In this chapter, you will find out the structure and function of human circulatory system, and also you will find out some medical problems affecting the heart and circulation. Here you can see the stages in the cardiac cycle. So, what do you mean by a cardiac cycle? So, cardiac cycle is described what? It describes series of events that take place in the heart over the duration of single heartbeat. So, it describes the events that take place in the heart over a single heartbeat. So actually the cardiac cycle consists of two phases. What are they? Diastolic phase and systolic phase. So in diastolic phase what happens? Heart ventricles are relaxed and heart fills with blood. And systolic phase what happens? The ventricles contract and pump blood out of the heart to arteries. So what happens in systolic phase? Ventricles contract and pump blood out of the heart to arteries. So in atrial systole, what happens there? Both atria contract and forces the blood from atria into ventricles. And ventricular systole, what happens? both ventricles contract, blood is forced to the lung via pulmonary artery. And in atrial diastole, what happened? Relaxation of atria. During the atria filled with blood from vena cava, it relaxes. Then ventricular diastole. So it begins before atrial systole. That means before atria contract to force blood into ventricles. So this allows ventricles to fill blood from the atria. So those are the things which you should know about the cardiac cycle. And here you can use these 5 steps to mention what are the stages of the cardiac cycle. Now let's see cardiac muscle. So the wall of heart is made out from special type of muscle which are known as cardiac muscle. So what is the specialty in cardiac muscle? It never gets fatigued like skeletal muscle. So here in this picture you can see how cardiac muscle viewed through a light microscope. Here you can see the striated branching muscle fibers and nuclei. So the one of other features are the muscle cells are striped and they have several nuclei per cell. And also the cardiac muscle has its own blood supply, which is known as coronary circulation. So the blood is supplied by the coronary arteries, and also the blood is returned to the right atrium via coronary veins. So now we will discuss about heart rate. So normally our heart beats about 70 times a minute, but this can be changed according to the needs of body. So when we exercise, what happened to the muscles? The muscles release more energy. So they need increased supply of oxygen for aerobic respiration. So in order to deliver this extra oxygen to muscle, both number of beats per minute, that means heart rate, and the volume of blood pumped with each beat, that means stroke volume, should be increased. So when we are sleeping, what happens? Our heart rate decreases. As all our organs are working more slowly, they need to release very less energy, and so also less oxygen. Actually, the changes in the heart rate are controlled by nerve impulses from the cardiac center in the brain, where we call as medulla. So when we start to exercise, our muscles produce more carbon dioxide, and the receptors in aorta and the carotid artery, which carry blood to the head, detect this increase. So this send electrical signals or nerve impulses through the sensory nerve to medulla. So the medulla responds by sending nerve impulses along the accelerator nerve. So when carbon dioxide production returns to the normal, what happened? The medulla receives fever impulses. So it responds by sending nerve impulses along a decelerator nerve. So the function of medulla is actually controlling the heart rate. So it also affects to the blood pressure also. So then pulse rate. So actually pulse rate is a measurement of the heart rate. So it measures number of times that heart beats per minute. So as the heart pushes blood through the arteries, arteries expand and contract with the flow of the blood. So taking a pulse is not only measurement the heart rate, but it can also indicate the rhythm of heart. So actually the normal resting heart rate range is 40 beats per minute to 100 beats per minute. So, and if you take the average resting heart rate for man is about 70 beats per minute, and for woman it is 75 beats per minute. This pulse rate is depend on sex, age and physical fitness. So actually a lower rate, if the pulse rate is lower, it indicates it's a sign of improved fitness you have. That this because the heart becomes more efficient at pumping blood around the body. So more blood is pumped with each beat. That means the stroke volume increases. So here you can see the main blood carrying vessels in the circulatory system: arteries, veins and capillaries. So arteries carry blood away from the heart. So the main artery is aorta, and the smaller arteries called arterioles then diverge into capillary beds. So then the capillaries carry blood away from the body and exchange the nutrients, waste and oxygen with tissues at cellular level. And then veins. The veins are blood vessels that bring blood back to the heart and drain blood from organs and limbs. So here you can see the sections through the three types of blood vessels in the first picture: artery, vein and capillary. So here you can see in an artery there's a thick outer wall and small lumen. So when compared to vein, the lumen is somewhat smaller in artery, but in vein there's a thin layer of muscles and it has larger lumen. And what about the capillary? Capillary, it has very small lumen and its wall is made out from single layer of cell. So here you can see the transverse section of artery and transverse section of vein. So there also you can clearly identify the difference between the layer of muscle, how it has varied from those two, and also how the lumen size is different from those two. So we will discuss the differences in next slide in detail. Here in this table you are given the features of arteries and veins. So let's compare them. So arteries. Arteries main function is what? Carry blood from heart to organs. Veins carry blood from organs to heart. And arteries carry oxygenated blood except pulmonary artery, and veins normally carry deoxygenated blood except pulmonary vein. And arteries usually located deep in the body, but veins are usually located close to the skin. And the middle layer is thick in arteries, which is known as tunica media, and that tunica media is relatively thin in veins. And the wall is elastic in arteries, and when considering veins, their wall is not elastic. And arteries possesses a narrow lumen, and veins possess a wider lumen. And when considering about the pressure of blood, the pressure of blood flowing through the artery is very high, but in veins the pressure is very low. Here you can see the main blood vessels in human circulatory system. So when heart is pumped the blood vessels are the one who carries the blood throughout the body. So arteries are usually carry oxygenated blood, and veins are usually carry deoxygenated blood. So, but sometimes this will become other way. One example is only one example is there. The pulmonary arteries. Pulmonary arteries and veins are an exception. So pulmonary veins carry oxygenated blood towards the heart, and pulmonary arteries carry deoxygenated blood away from the heart. And also there is another thing that you should remember, that blood is always red, but veins can appear blue because as we see them through our skin, therefore some people believe that deoxygenated blood is blue. However, this is not that case. Blood only appears blue because of that tissues absorb light and our eyes see that color. So although oxygen does have an effect on the brightness of the blood, blood is never actually blue. So more oxygen can make a brighter red than less makes it darker. So that's the thing. So apart from that, now when we come to here, so then pulse rate. So actually pulse rate is a measurement of the heart rate. So it measures number of times that heart beats per minute. So as the heart pushes blood through the arteries expand and contract with the flow of the blood. So taking a pulse is not only measurement the heart rate, but it can also indicate the rhythm of heart. So actually the normal resting heart rate range is 40 beats per minute to 100 beats per minute. So, and if you take the average resting heart rate for man is about 70 beats per minute, and for woman it is 75 beats per minute. This pulse rate is depend on sex, age and physical fitness. So actually a lower rate, if the pulse rate is lower, it indicates it's a sign of improved fitness. Here you can see the human lymphatic system. So the lymphatic system actually consists of vessels similar to blood capillaries. So they are sometimes called as lymphatic capillaries. So they transport fluid called lymph back to blood. So one example is that lacteals of small intestine are part of that lymphatic system. And before lymph passes back into the blood, it filtered, remove the dead cells and bacteria. So this take place in swellings, which are called as lymph nodes. So here also you can see there those lymph nodes. They contain white blood cells that are important in destroying harmful bacteria. So when a person get infected, one of the first sign may be swelling of the lymph node. So now we will see the composition of blood. So blood is actually a complex tissue. It has several types of cells suspended in that liquid called plasma. So plasma is a watery fluid. It contains many dissolved substances. So actually carbon dioxide is carried in the plasma, mainly as hydrogen carbonate ions. And plasma also contains nutrients from the digestion of food, such as glucose and amino acids. And also plasma transport the hormones. So now we will see those parts from this table. So here the plasma. You know that plasma is the liquid part of the blood. So what is the color of plasma? Straw colored. And main function is what? It carries blood cells, nutrients, hormones, carbon dioxide like gases, urea, and also it helps to distribute heat around the body. And then other component in the blood is red blood cell. So they are known as erythrocytes. So actually red blood cells are biconcave disc-like shape. They have biconcave disc-like shapes, cells, but they have not nucleus. The main function is transport oxygen. They have hemoglobin, which have the ability to bind oxygen molecules. So then white blood cells. So there are two types of white blood cells, lymphocytes and phagocytes. So lymphocyte, when we consider about lymphocytes, they are around same size of the red blood cell. They have large nucleus and their main function is produce antibodies to destroy organisms. They produce antibodies. So then if we consider about the phagocyte, another type of white blood cell, they are much larger than red blood cells. They have the ability to digest and destroy the bacteria. They are doing engulfing process. So then the platelets. The platelets are the smallest cells or fragment of other cells. So main function is releasing chemicals to make blood clot when cut. Here you can see the composition of blood, how the red blood cells present in a blood vessel and white blood cell and the platelets. And also then the second picture you can see the color of blood plasma and white blood cells and also the red blood cells. So now let's see the features of red blood cell. So as I told you, red blood cell contain hemoglobin. So they have large quantities of hemoglobin, which is a protein which can combine with oxygen to form oxyhemoglobin. So then it has no nucleus. That means there are more space inside of the cell is given to bind oxygen molecules, more oxygen molecules. And then red blood cells are small and flexible. So then it allows red blood cells to squeeze through narrow capillaries also without getting stuck. And the biconcave shape, it has a flattened disc shape to increase the surface area to volume ratio for the more efficient rate of diffusion of oxygen. Now we will see about white blood cells. So white blood cells are part of body immune system. So there are two main types of white blood cells, as I told you earlier, phagocytes and lymphocytes. Their main role is to protect or defend body against infection by pathogenic microorganisms, and they perform this protection in two main ways, by phagocytosis and lymphocytes. That means production of antibodies. So the phagocytes is doing what? Carry out phagocytosis by engulfing and digesting pathogens. And lymphocytes do what? They produce antibodies to destroy pathogenic cells and antitoxins to neutralize the toxins released by those pathogens. And all cells have proteins and other substances projecting from their cell membrane, which are known as antigens, and they are specific to that type of cell. So what do that lymphocytes do? They have ability to read that antigens on the surface, and they can recognize that they are a foreign matter or not. If it's a foreign matter, they will fight against that and they will destroy them. Now let's talk about platelets. So actually platelets are not whole cells. They are fragments of large cells. They are made out in bone marrow. Actually the red blood cells and white blood cells are also produced from bone marrow. So when your skin is cut or broken, or if there's a wound, what happens? As soon as the platelets arrive that place and stop the bleeding. So there a chain of reaction is going on. So and finally it forms a blood clot. So the final stages of that reaction chain is shown here. So actually at the final stages, what happened there is there's a soluble protein in the plasma called prothrombin. So it is converted into an enzyme called thrombin. So then that enzyme causes fibrinogen. There's a soluble plasma protein called fibrinogen. So that thrombin causes fibrinogen to change into insoluble protein called fibrin. So this fibrin forms a network across the wound, and then red blood cells also become trapped in that network. So this will form a blood clot there. So then it prevents further loss of blood and stops pathogens entering the wound. So this is a very protective mechanism in our human body. Let's identify the blood groups. Actually, every person blood group is determined by a pair of genes which are inherited us by our parents. So the blood group is actually depend on the antigens. So antigens which are on the located on the surface of the red blood cells. So there are two types of antigens which are important to blood grouping. They are A antigen and B antigen, and those antigens are normally glycoprotein or carbohydrate molecules. And there are 4 blood groups. So they are A, B, AB and O. And when we are talking about antibodies, each person has antibodies in their plasma. So these antibodies will destroy red blood cells with a particular antigen by making them agglutinate. So what is that agglutination then? It means that they stick together and make clumps. So what happens here is, for an example, anti-A antibody agglutinates any red blood cells with A antigen, and anti-B antibody agglutinates any red blood cells with B antigen. So if we summarize those the presence or absence of antigens and antibodies in different blood groups here, you can identify how this take place. So here A blood group has A antigen, and the antibody present in their serum is anti-B, and B blood group has B antigen and antibodies present is anti-A, and AB blood group has A antigen and B antigen, and there are no antibodies, and B blood group has no antigens present on their red blood cells, and they have anti-B and both anti-A and anti-B antibodies there. So if we take one example, so if a doctor gives a blood transfusion of type A blood to a person with type B blood, what will happen to that patient? Definitely that patient may die, because that the person receiving blood has anti-A antibodies in their plasma. So that will make that red blood cells agglutinate. That blood cells will clump inside the blood vessels and block them. So if the antigens and antibodies can react, that will unsafe. That transfusion will be unsafe. So that is very important to match the blood group when you are transfusion. So now we will see about blood transfusion. So actually it is a way of adding blood to your body. So after an illness or injury, so this can supply what you are missing. So the definition of blood transfusion is this: the transfer of blood or blood components from one person, that means the donor, to another person, bloodstream. That receiver is called as recipient. So when you get a transfusion, the blood you are given has to work with the type of blood you have. So either A, B, B, O. Otherwise what happens? The antibodies in your own blood will attack it and cause many problems. So that's why always the doctors are screened for blood type. So about in the world about 40% of people have O type O blood group, and it is safe to give almost anyone in the transfusion. So therefore, in this table, if you look at this table also, you can see that a person who has O blood group can donate blood to any other types, and if you have AB blood group, you can receive any type of blood, and therefore this is called as universal recipient. So now let's see what is this coronary heart disease or CHD. It is caused by blockage of coronary arteries. So what is the importance of coronary arteries? They supply blood to the heart muscle. So and they are the most narrowest arteries in the body. So they can be easily blocked by fatty substances such as cholesterol when they deposit in the walls. So this condition is also known as hardening of arteries or atherosclerosis. So if this happens, what will do? The oxygen supply to the heart muscle will reduce, and the first symptom of this blockage is chest pain. When a person exercises, he or she may feel chest pain. This is called as angina. So these fatty deposits are known as plaque. So this plaque can build up and block coronary artery completely also. So if this happen, what will do? This can cause the artery completely block. What will happen? The oxygen supply to the heart muscle will completely cut off. So that will stop the contracting of heart. So this is called as heart attack. So now let's see the risk factors for coronary heart diseases. There are a number of factors that make coronary heart disease. So among them, these are main factors that can cause for heart diseases. So the first one is heredity. So some people inherit genes that make them more likely to suffer from these heart diseases. And then high blood pressure. So if one people have high blood pressure continuously, what will happen permanently, or what will happen? It is the condition called as hypertension. So the heart has to work harder to pump the blood, which actually it more strain on the heart muscle. So then the diet. So diet, if you always used to eat diet which is high in fat, especially saturated fat, which raise the blood cholesterol. So it will also cause for these coronary heart diseases, because high cholesterol in the blood combine with other lipids and form plaque. And then smoking. So the nicotine and tobacco. Smoke has several harmful effects. So it constricts blood vessels and it raises the blood pressure and speed up the heart rate and increases the blood cholesterol also. And also the smoking contains carbon monoxide, which reduces the ability of blood to carry oxygen. So then the stress. Actually, the hormones released during stress constrict blood vessels. They raise the blood pressure. Therefore, it raises the blood pressure. And lack of exercise. So the regular exercise helps to reduce blood pressure, and that strengthens the heart. And diabetes. So this disease results in actually high blood glucose levels. So this can be lead to an increase in the fatty substances deposited in the plaques. And then we will see how to prevent from these coronary heart diseases. So if you practice good healthy lifestyle, you can easily prevent from these coronary heart diseases. Some risk factors are there, like heredity. You cannot avoid that ones, but there are some risk factors what you can avoid, no? So these are given here. If you do not smoke or exercise regularly and eat a healthy and balanced diet and stay at a healthy weight without going to obesity, this will help to prevent coronary heart disease. So now we will see about heart transplants. So heart transplant is a surgical procedure. It is carried out on a patient with heart failure or severe heart disease. So there what happens is a functioning heart is removed from the body of a person who has recently died. It is the organ of donor. So and implanted into the patient. So usually the patient heart is removed and replaced it with new heart. So when you are looking for a donor organ, it is important to find one with antigens on the cell that match with the patient's antigen as closely as possible, because the risk of rejection can be reduced then considerably by matching the antigens which are closely, and using immunosuppressive drugs also the risk can be reduced. So actually the demand for donor organs for heart transplant is always greater than the supply. So therefore nowadays scientists have developed artificial hearts also. Actually this artificial heart is a synthetic device that is made out from mainly from plastic and some metal alloys. So the main purpose is to keep people alive in the time that they are leading up to heart transplant. So actually this it does not replace the heart, but it helps to function the heart. So now let's discuss about exercise and cardiovascular system. So actually cardiovascular system is heart and the blood vessels together. So during exercising, what happens? Heart rate and blood pressure increases to a maximum level. Because in order to deliver extra oxygen to muscles. So they remain this level during the whole period of exercising. So then it begins to decrease when you are stop the exercising. So this graph shows how the heart rate is changing with the time. So the period when heart rate and blood pressure are returning to normal following an exercise is called as recovery period. So actually the heart rate and blood pressure don't drop back to the normal level straight away. Instead, it decreases gradually during that period. Because during exercise, there's lactate is formed in the muscles by anaerobic respiration. So lactate must be oxidized before it can be removed from the muscles. So actually if the length of recovery time is a rough measure how healthy your heart is. If the heart can pump enough oxygen to the muscle during exercise, only a little lactate will be formed and that recovery period will be short one. So actually now let's discuss about aerobic exercise. The aerobic exercise is a physical exercise which depends mainly on ATP supplied by aerobic respiration. So it consists of light to moderate activities like walking, jogging, swimming and cycling. So during this aerobic exercise, it strengthens heart muscles and reduces the resting heart rate and blood pressure. And also it increases the number of red blood cells in the body. And this helps with the transport of oxygen. And here are some benefits which can gain by aerobic exercise. So it helps to maintain a healthy body weight and prevent obesity, and also to reduce the levels of lipids, cholesterols in the blood, and improve the strength of tendons and ligaments, and strengthen the diaphragm and intercostal muscles, and also it increases the vital capacity of the lungs, and it stimulates the immune system, and it helps to maintain glucose levels in a regular scale in the blood. Here in this table you are given the features of arteries and veins. So let's compare them. So arteries main function is what? Carry blood from heart to organs. Veins carry blood from organs to heart. And arteries carry oxygenated blood except pulmonary artery, and veins normally carry deoxygenated blood except pulmonary vein. And arteries usually located deep in the body, but veins are usually located close to the skin. And the middle layer is thick in arteries, which is known as tunica media, and that tunica media is relatively thin in veins, and the wall is elastic in arteries, and when considering veins, their wall is not elastic. And arteries possesses a narrow lumen, and veins possess a wider lumen. And when considering about the pressure of blood, the pressure of blood flowing through the artery is very high, but in veins the pressure is very low. So now we will see about blood transfusion. So actually it is a way of adding blood to your body. So after an illness or injury. So this can supply what you are missing. So the definition of blood transfusion is this: the transfer of blood or blood components from one person, that means the donor, to another person, bloodstream. That receiver is called as recipient. So when you get a transfusion, the blood you are given has to work with the type of blood you have. So either A, B, B, O. Otherwise what happens? The antibodies in your own blood will attack it and cause many problems. So that's why always the doctors are screened for blood type. So about in the world about 40% of people have O type O blood group, and it is safe to give almost anyone in the transfusion. So therefore in this table, if you look at this table also, you can see that a person who has O blood group can donate blood to any other types, and if you have AB blood group, you can receive any type of blood, and therefore this is called as universal recipient. So here from this video you have learned about the structure of circulatory system, that means the structure and function of heart and cardiac muscles and the cardiac cycle and heart rate, and the structure of arteries, veins and capillaries, and the composition of blood, tissue fluid, and the blood groups and blood transfusion. And also you have learned about the coronary diseases and prevention and treatments also. So now at the end you have chapter questions. Now you can try those things and enrich your knowledge. Thank you all for listening.